It's week 5 in the NFL, and that means it's time to win some DFS money. Who are you playing? Who are you avoiding? What are the traps? Don't worry. Chris Meaney and I have got you on lockdown because the pre-snap starts right now.
585, ready.
You're listening to the PreSnap podcast, brought to you by LineStar, the top-rated DFS tool set and #1 companion for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Go LineStar Premium now at LineStarApp.com. Now, here are your hosts, fantasy football experts Joe Pisapia and Chris Meaney.
Hey, yo, what's up, everybody? It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and welcome to another fantastic episode of the pre-snap right here on the LineStar app. It's me, and it's Chris Meaney, and it's you, and we are breaking down the Week 5 schedule for you on DK, on FanDuel, on everything, because we're full service here. That's how we roll. Chris Meaney, speaking of rolling, lots of crazy injury stuff. Who's playing, who's not, who wants to be traded? My goodness, Week 5 starting to get a little hot here, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's been a crazy week in the Meaney household. The puck dropped in the NHL season just the other day. You know, I feel like this is my fix, man, to sit down and talk some football with you and our listeners here at LineStar. I'm diving deep into the LineStar app, looking at the projections, looking at the cornerback matchups. I am ready to go. But yeah, I don't know if Stefon Diggs is ready to go. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Stefon Diggs is certainly
he's ready to go, actually, out the door.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. That's for sure. I don't know. He wants to it's funny. Everybody now, just even the college kids, some of them are like, yeah, not going to play anymore.
I don't know where that came from. It's kind of reminding me of the NBA. I felt like only people in the NBA did that. And like, if you signed a contract, and you were loyal to that contract. I mean, he just signed one recently. So, yeah. I mean, you got to play this out, Diggs. I know you're not happy you want the football. I get it. But, this is the way it is.
Well, there it is. Well, hopefully he'll play because I think he's got a good matchup here. We'll see what's going on. But, oh, my goodness, so many crazy things. But let's get after it, and let's start with the Jaguars at Panthers. Now, look, from a DFS standpoint, last week we talked at length about CMC because the way the board worked out, there were not a lot of big stud running backs on the board for the main slate because you had Kamara and you had Ezekiel Elliott not in there. So it was a really good week for McCaffrey. This week, a little bit different in terms of who's available. And I think you have a lot more options. So I guess here's the big question because, it's a pretty price tag. We all know that. Is this a week where you are paying up for McCaffrey in cash? Is this a week where McCaffrey carries over to tournaments? I know last week the answer for both of us was yes and yes. What's your answer this week, Chris?
I mean, I think yes, and I know his prices jumped up, as you mentioned, 8,700, 9,100 on FanDuel, but I mean, this guy's just playing all of the snaps, 100% of the snaps last week. In 3 of the 4 games, it's been 100% of the snaps, and I know he's probably eventually going to break down. He's on pace for 450 touches, 2,500 yards. Like those are just numbers that it's going to be very, very difficult for him to reach, but 64 touches in the last 2 games without Cam Newton, 51 of those touches carries. He'd be silly not to just plug him in and try to make it work. I mean, he's a tough guy to fade in tournaments, and in cash, it gets even tougher to roll him out in cash because you want a balanced lineup. But I think there's still enough value on the board this week with some of the injuries and some guys that we'll touch on throughout the show that you could make it work in cash. I mean, it's almost silly to avoid him. I get wanting to in tournaments, but it's been 3 out of the 4 weeks. If you faded him, you probably didn't get to that threshold, that money that you wanted to get to.
Yeah, look, I had him everywhere in both, and it was the right call last week. I wouldn't say it's mandatory in GPP this week at all. I will say in cash game, you still want to try to find your way to get some McCaffrey if you can because the volume is just so much. And I don't really trust Kyle Allen in this game here against the Jaguars. So if I don't trust him, I can't imagine the coaching staff trusting him either. The Jaguars defense has played pretty well, and they've rallied around Minshew. We all know that. Look, I'm not taking a lot of one-offs in this game. I don't want to waste everyone's time with the listeners talking about this guy and that guy because that's not our show. That has never been the pre-snap. Everybody knows that's not how we roll here on LineStar. We like to get in, get out, get you the things you need. So
I do like Fournette, though. I like Fournette in this game for Jacksonville. His price is still, I don't understand what's going on there. Like $6,400 is too cheap on DraftKings because he's catching balls out of the backfield now, and $6,900 as well. It's the same thing as McCaffrey. Like, He's getting all of the snaps as well, like absolutely everything. And for Carolina's rush defense, I mean, it ranks 29th according to Football Outsiders. So he's just on the field. He's getting passes. He ranks third in touches with 88. So, I mean, I think both of these guys are decent plays, and you're going to save a hell of a lot more cash rolling out Fournette than McCaffrey.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that too. And look, if you're trying to make up lineups, we always remind everybody, make sure you're using that LineStar app as well. Looking at the return on investment too, Christian McCaffrey on LineStar app is the third highest projected running back over there too. So not only do they have all the projections with the optimizer on both sites, but they've also got the cornerback matchup stuff, which is fantastic. So
Beautiful.
you know where those wide receivers are, who they're going against, and who to avoid. Even if it's a big talent, necessarily it's not always the best. And if you play that properly, then you were probably fading Hopkins last couple of weeks too, because those cornerback matchups were tough for him. Let's go to the next one here, and let's talk about the Patriots at Redskins. So are you playing quarterback for the Redskins this weekend? Because I'm not exactly sure, where that's all going. Jay Gruden's lost his mind, Chris. That's basically where we're at. But I think this is a bounce back game for the Pats offense. We saw a lot of Sony Michel last week because that secondary for Buffalo is very, very good. We'll talk about them later on in the show. But I think you can go back to the Edelmans of the world.
I really like Gordon. I really like Gordon this week.
Yeah, Gordon. Definitely Gordon too. I think you go back to it. I think you don't worry about it. Tom Brady, I'm kind of on the fence with. It's funny because actually, wouldn't you know it, LineStar loves Tom Brady too. So maybe I should be on the other side of the fence because he's their number one FanDuel quarterback in terms of ROI.
Well, have you seen the price? Yeah, I mean, on DraftKings, I understand wanting to fade him on DraftKings. He's the third highest priced quarterback, but on FanDuel, you actually have to scroll down a little bit. He's 10th highest price. I mean, $7,600. He's the same price as Jameis Winston. I mean, he's cheaper than Rodgers, who could be without Devontae Adams. Like Matt Ryan is I actually like Ryan this week, but I don't mind Brady at all. I think if you're a FanDuel player, you plug him in and you take that value and you take that discount, because I wouldn't take too much stock into last week's performance against Buffalo. You and I have been talking about the Bills defense since before week one has even started. Like, they're just legit. And it was completely, I mean, you saw it right there last week. If you watched that game, he couldn't really do a whole lot, but this is a defense in Washington that ranks 26th against the pass. They can't stop anybody. There is that fear that it is Sony Michel getting those touches in the red zone, or Rex Burkhead, but I think this is a get-right game for New England and Brady. And I say get right, but let's get the offense going here. We have an opportunity to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. I think it's going to be very, very possible. I like Edelman's a cash game play for sure, but I'm going to take some shots with Josh Gordon in tournaments. I think he's going to get him involved. And obviously, this, you're always talking about Dorsett. He's always involved as well.
Well, right now, according to the matchups, it looks like Norman would be on the other side of the field against Dorsett. So if that holds true,
give me all the Gordon.
Then give me all the Gordon. He's 6,200 over on FanDuel. On DK, he's 61. So if that matchup is true and that's what's looking right now, yeah, I mean, that's just, it's very funny about those certain corners that they only like to play one side.
Yeah.
To me, you can't call yourself a great corner if you don't go wherever the best guy is. I'm sorry.
Right. No, I agree. And they tried to move him around Norman a little bit, but I think Norman's overrated anyways. But yeah, if Gordon is going to get away from him and it's going to be Dunbar, then yeah, sign me up. I mean, it's a plus matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the next one here. Cause I mean, I'm guessing the Redskins, you're not high on this week. I'm just throwing that out there. Okay. I want to make sure I make a safe place for everyone's thoughts and opinions here in the show. Everyone can have that.
Yeah, if you can get the Pats D, I think you roll them out. They're super expensive, but last week again, and this is a defense, Joe, that's averaging 20 DraftKings points per game. The next closest on the slate, the Bears at 13. That's a difference maker.
It's a huge look, and you got to pay up. I'm sorry, man. 5,500 on FanDuel. I actually think it's worth it. And you can do it. Too. Look, I've got a lineup right now that I'm looking at FanDuel. You could do Thomas, Julio, Goodwin, Winston, and Sutton in the Pats defense. And it's easy to get a tight end and plug him in there. It's easy to get, running backs and plug him in there. You don't have the highest end running backs, but it's doable. It is not difficult. It's certainly far from impossible there. But you make a good point too about Brady and Winston being the same price. In terms of ownership, Brady, I think, will be double what Winston is. But I think Winston, when we get to him a little later on the show, is going to have some opportunities too. We got an opportunity for the Ravens to bounce back here against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think they do. I don't believe in the Steelers. I know it's in Pittsburgh. I think they got a real shellacking last week, and I think they come back feisty this week. And Pittsburgh kind of showed their hand already with all these gimmicky offensive things, and none of them get me excited from a DFS standpoint. The fact that Connor's banged up. Look, I'm sure they're going to rely on Connor. If you want to go in on the Connor train, that's fine. How do you feel about Connor this week in terms of the presence of Jalen Samuels in this offense now going forward, but also the weekly health issues that seem to surround him?
Yeah, I think it's trouble getting involved with either of these guys. You know, what we saw last week, Connor had 10 carries, Samuels had 10 carries, and they both caught all 8 of their targets. So, I mean, they both split touches, and I don't want anything to do with that at all. So, I mean, I'm mostly a cash game player, so I will fade everything to do with Pittsburgh and probably Baltimore as well. But if you're a tournament player, then you can take some shots. I think Connor has the highest ceiling, but it's, you know, I mean, it is a little concerning that Samuel's got as much play as he did. I mean, he was even throwing footballs last week. I think he was 3 for 3 passing balls. So I think the one guy that I would take a shot on maybe from this game, from a wide receiver standpoint, is Deontay Johnson. But again, you know, he's got touchdowns in back-to-back games. He seems to be the guy over James Washington. And maybe Juju, if you want to go Juju's route, seeing what he did last week. But again, I would not roll him out in cash. Things have changed in Pittsburgh. It's a different offense now.
Connor on 69 is like right on that border on FanDuel where I don't know. I can't get into it. I guess I just fear Mason Rudolph's ability to put up points here. The Bengals are one thing. I don't think the Ravens defense is great. I mean, I keep harping on that, but they're definitely better. And
yeah, I mean, Fournette is the same price, 69. This guy's played 91% of the snaps.
You just nailed it. There you go. You just totally nailed it. That's the problem. That's the big problem is why. Yeah. And it's not enough of an upside to differentiate for it. So right. I don't think it's I'm going to do a couple of lineups with Connor and a couple of lineups with Fournette and see what hits. I don't think that's a sell. On the Ravens side, Andrews looks like he's going to play. That's a good thing. I think Marquise Brown is in play in this one too. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. I feel like he's flying under the radar right now. So if you're looking for somebody that's got tournament upside, I think he's that kind of guy because he does not have to touch the football a million times to be useful. That's something I always love in the tournaments. And I think Lamar Jackson's going to have a good day, as they say in the business. He's just 54, by the way. Hollywood Brown, just 54.
Yeah, he's a good price. He's a good price. He's that poster boy, the boomer bust guy. He's the tournament guy. And you know, Lamar just missed him last week in the end zone as well. So you're right. Look at week 1. He hardly touched the field and he was, you know, he was unbelievable. You had him, you won a bunch of cash. So I like that stack. I think it's a sneaky tournament stack.
Yeah. All right. Let's continue on here as we fly through the slate. Cardinals at Bengals. Okay. So who likes garbage time? who likes garbage points? Ooh, you know, let me tell you, man, it's a sad state of affairs because like normally if you showed me this game, I don't know, in August on the schedule, I'd say, ooh, awesome. That's a game where I'm into the Joe Mixon. And I'd love to get there, but I don't think I can. I'm so frustrated with Cincinnati right now. And they lost another piece with John Ross now out for a while. So I'm going to ask you, what's your temperature right now? Because here we are, Joe Mixon in a good matchup, but I feel like it's still kind of tough to feel any kind of confidence, even at 7,100 over on FanDuel or 6,100 on DK.
Yeah, I'm not interested. Not interested at all. I am interested in Tyler Boyd. They're just throwing the football a lot ever since Zach Taylor came in. I mean, they're tossing the ball. I mean, this could be a fantasy game in terms of both quarterbacks. They're both top 4 in passing attempts. Both defenses are awful, but you wonder if it is a close game. Maybe both running backs, maybe Mixon gets a little bit of play, but you mentioned Ross is gone. AJ Green is still sidelined. Giovanni Bernard had, I think, six targets last week. Auden Tate had 6 targets last week. So I'm just going to avoid Mixon. I like Boyd a lot. I mean, he's still top 4 in targets and catches. I think he's got a good opportunity and what could be a high-paced game, some chucking. But that's really it. Auden Tate is maybe that punt play. If you want to go that way on DraftKings, you're looking for just that value. I mean, he's only $3,500.
Well, that was the point.
He's been involved. 16 targets last week.
Yeah. And there's going to be, look, people are going to do that. There's going to be, would you say 20%?
He probably will be pretty chalky.
I would say 20 at least, somewhere in that neighborhood.
But I'd try him out. I would try him out in one. And then on the other side, I mean, you're missing Kirk there. So there's an opportunity for Larry Fitzgerald. I feel like Fitz and Boyd are 2 strong cash plays. They're going to get some work out of the slot. But the guy I really like in this matchup is David Johnson. And again, I look at his price and he's another reason, like, why would I go Connor at 69 when I can go maybe David Johnson at $6,800? I mean, he's a better play over on DraftKings. You get that full point for the catch, but this is somebody who's been involved as well. He's got, this is just a great matchup. I mean, the Bengals have allowed the second most fantasy points to running backs, and you just look at DJ, he's second in targets, third in catches, fifth in receiving yards among running backs. So I think, again, he gets involved. Without Christian Kirk, he probably catches a few more balls. So I'd much rather go the Johnson route than the Mixon route, and he's just cheaper.
Yeah, and LineStar agrees with you. They really like Johnson. You know, he hasn't had that game yet this year.
No,
maybe this is the one. You could certainly make the case that he's overdue. I just keep worrying about the fact that their commitment to the run is very different right now. And basically they're content with playing their options basically and letting Kyler Murray drop back and run if he has to, instead of really, making sure that they're filtering the ball over and over and over again to David Johnson, which I think when you look up at the win-losses, honestly, I think that's kind of why they're at where they're at right now. They're not a great defensive team. They're still work in progress on offense. However, I think a little bit more commitment to the running game would serve them well. We'll see if it happens this week. I think it's worth getting some shares of. I agree with LineStar App. I agree with Chris here. I think it certainly makes sense. And look, it's a decent ROI in terms of price. All right, here we go. You ready? You got your thinking cap on for this next one? Falcons at Texans.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So here's my hot take. You ready? DeAndre Hopkins has a big game. I'm not sure if I want to pair him with Watson because I'm still super concerned about that offensive line. But I think Hopkins can catch 6 or 7 balls and still be really good and come away with a touchdown or two because this Falcons defense in the secondary is atrocious. So that's my feeling there. You can play around with Hyde too. I don't love it. It's not terrible. But again, they don't tackle anybody anywhere, and running backs seem to be having pretty good fantasy point games against the Falcons. And on the other side, it's Matt Ryan and it's Julio Jones, and you got to fade the rest, right? I mean, you can't count on Ridley. Hooper is up and down. Where are you at here with this game? That's my take on it. I want to know what you're involved in or not.
Yeah, this is a tough game. I have a hard time figuring out the Falcons, really. I do know that their defense is bad, like you said, tackling. And one thing I know is Matt Ryan is throwing the ball more than anybody else because they have no run game. So I do like Matt Ryan. I think he's sneaky from a tournament standpoint. I think he could, hit some of his weapons. I agree with you. Julio is probably the only one I'd pair him up with. I mean, you go over on FanDuel and you look at some of the tight end prices and you're just like, wow, what? Austin Hooper is the most expensive tight end on the board. He's more than Ertz, and I know Waller's in a bad spot. Ingram, like, I'm not going to go there with Austin Hooper, but I do see him trending up. He seems to be Matt Ryan's second target, and it also seems that Sanu has passed Ridley, at least in terms of targets and looks as well. But I like Ryan. I like Julio. That's probably it from the Atlanta side. I agree with you on Hopkins. I think like now is the time for people that are just average DFS plays and they're just like, wow, I thought Hopkins was good. What do you mean 9 DK points, 12-8? Like Hopkins is not good. Why am I going to spend up for Hopkins when I can look at Keenan Allen, for example, is somebody who's averaging 26 DraftKings points, 10 more than him. So if you're listening and you're looking for some advice, it's coming for Hopkins. The offensive line is not good. Watson is scrambling to try to find some time to throw downfield to a guy like Fuller, but I think Hopkins gets right. This is a good spot for him. I mean, look at Corey Davis last week. We haven't seen Corey Davis in years. What has Corey Davis done for the Titans? Like, it's hard to find good games, and he showed up last week.
Here's what's fascinating, too, because I love Julio this week, and then if you really want the dart throw of all dart throws this week in terms of ownership, in terms of potential, Calvin Ridley against Jonathan Joseph, who's ranked 82nd here in terms of corners. So we haven't had, Calvin Ridley's been, let's call it a disappointment. He's been an absolute disappointment. He had one good game against the Eagles. Outside of that, the first week against Minnesota was palatable. It was fine, 14. So, 1 and 5 back-to-back weeks. So there could very well be a massive correction here coming. But again, this is why the tools at LineStar are so helpful, because when you go in here and you peel it away and you look, we already talked about Hollywood Brown. He's got the second best ROI and matchup in terms of price and matchup with corner. So we were right about that one. And we weren't even looking at this at the time, but now we're looking at it for Calvin Ridley. The only guy better than him is Calvin Ridley. So nice. I don't know what this cap's at. I don't know if this is still a 13, 14-point day regardless. But in terms of ownership, if he should have one of those Calvin Ridley games we saw last year where he's got multiple touchdowns, that's going to be something that changes things significantly. So if there's a pivot there, if you're going cash with Matt Ryan and Julio, that's fine. If you're going tournament, I think Ridley's the guy you should consider this week.
Yeah, it's a good call. It's because the fantasy community is out on Ridley, right? I mean, they're seeing the Sanu and the Hooper, passing him. So we know what he's capable of. I mean,
he's a tremendous talent.
Tremendous talent. And look at last year, like all of his touchdowns really kind of came in bunches. I mean, he had a 3-touchdown game. I think he had a 2-touchdown game. Like they have come in just like when he's had those good matchups, they exploit it. And so like, I actually like Ryan a lot. And the more that you talk about that matchup, and Mohamed Sanu has a nice matchup too, and Freeman can't run and he's catching 6 or 7 balls out of the backfield, I'm interested in Matt Ryan. I know this Falcons team is a mess, but I'm kind of interested.
Dude, I can't wait tomorrow for Mike Randall and I to talk about this game. I can't wait to hear what he has to say about it.
It's a tough game to figure out.
Mike is hilarious. And let me tell you, Mike's got such a good beat on things. He nailed the upset special last week. And if you're not listening to that one, again, get over to the wagering show, man. 4 out of what are we at now? Let's see, 8. It's just 8 picks. I'm doing math here. 4, carry the 2. So here we go. We've had 8 upset specials, and we've gotten 6 of the 8 correct so far between the two of us. So
very nice.
Look, we're helping, and we're talking about not just covers, but some outright winners too. So there's a lot there. Make sure you check that out on Friday when that thing drops too. Let's do Buccaneers and Saints. Let's go here. Let's go there. Because the Saints defense has been excellent the last couple of weeks. Yeah. They went in and they beat Seattle. They've been picking up this offense and carrying them on their back. And then they were home and they beat Dallas. I feel like this is a letdown game coming. I understand the Bucs just went out and put 50 on somebody, so that raised some eyebrows. But here's my thing about the Bucs. They don't care. They will make a million mistakes and then keep throwing the football. They don't care. They just don't care. And if you look so far, the one place you can beat them is in the air. You can beat them in the air. And I feel like that's kind of the problem there. Dak kind of failed there last week, and the week before, the Seattle ran the ball real hard, and a couple of fumbles didn't go their way, and some turnovers and a pick 6 and all that. And that all did not work out. But I like the Bucs in this one. I got to tell you, I like Winston and I like Godwin specifically. I think, I'll let Evans and Lattimore fight it out. I'm going to go with Godwin this week, and I think he's going to give them fits. And I'll tell you the other piece I love too this week, Ronald Jones. Look at the Ronald Jones game log. He's just 59 on FanDuel. Outside of that wackadoo Thursday game where he got hurt, by the way. So outside of that, 13 attempts, 14 attempts, 19 attempts, 75 yards, 80 yards, 70 yards. Now he's got the 1 rushing touchdown. So I understand you'd love to see some more touchdowns, but just from a sheer volume and commitment standpoint, I know Peyton Barber's going to be annoying. I know he might score a touchdown and take it away from him. But let me tell you, as a lineup builder this week, I think you can do a lot worse than Ronald Jones as your RB2.
Yeah, I like the way he runs. He runs really hard. And my one fear is that you just don't know with Bruce Arians. He has said numerous times that Barber's his starter and he's going to ride the hot hand. But I think there's completely more upside with Ronald Jones. Absolutely. I wish he'd catch a few more balls out of the backfield, but I see this as a game where you're right. I think you've nailed it. New Orleans is much stronger against the run, and they're weak against the pass. I mean, they're the 5th worst team, according to Football Outsiders, against the pass. So I think this could be a game where Jameis drops back 40 times and throws the ball.
Oh, yeah.
We saw that last week, right? I mean, hitting Godwin.
And look, and Ronald Jones still carried all those points. He still carried the ball 14 times, 15 times.
Yeah, he did.
What are we worried about?
Jameis is very interesting. He's a nice value play on DraftKings.
He is the imminent pivot to Brady, because Brady's going to be just through the roof. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. Like, I mean, the kicker situation's a little frustrating there too. God knows how that might impact things. I don't know, man. I don't have faith in the Patriots. I do. I just think that everybody sees this matchup and everyone's going to be on it. Whereas Winston and the Saints, people go, well, I don't going to believe it again. I don't know, man. They threw up a lot of points against the Giants too. I know.
Yeah, they're going to hang around. Yeah, they're going to hang around. And Jameis is we can laugh at him all you want from a real life quarterback, but this doesn't matter. Like, he's a fantasy quarterback. He puts up numbers because, like you said, he's not afraid to make mistakes, and he continues to do it. I mean, 385 yards, 380 yards. Those are his last 2 games. Like, he's throwing the ball a ton, and he's got 2 elite weapons and a tight end that hopefully they start to use.
All right. Speaking of elite weapons, how about Dalvin Cook and the Vikings taking on the New York Giants? Now, the Giants, another bad defensive team, but I think this one has some appeal here. I think Adam Thielen has some tournament appeal because people have given up on Kirk Cousins, but again, Giants defense, very bad. You can throw all day on them. Just go look. The fact that the Redskins did what they did last week is just tells you how bad and how the wheels have completely come off there. But outside of that, Dalvin Cook, obviously still somebody you can fire up in cash. I think it carries over into tournament too. There's ways to make that work, like Calvin Ridley, like Marquise Brown. And then on the other side of this one, I would stay away from Daniel Jones. I would stay away from Wayne Gallman. I think Shepard, now that Tate's back in the slot, is fascinating to me. I think that's a guy that you can cherry pick. But outside of that, I'm going to fade the Giants, but I will look for Cook and Thielen specifically over on the Viking side. How do you see this one shaking out here for your fantasy shares, if any?
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I think Cook is, I wouldn't take too much stock into last week against the Bears defense. They don't allow too much on the ground. So, I mean, before that, Cook had 100 yards in each of his 3 games, and, he's got 5 TDs. So he's well on his way to potentially leading this team or leading the league in touchdowns, because this is what Minnesota wants to do. This is why Stephon Diggs wants out of town, because he wants some targets and he wants the ball. And they brought in Kubiak, and they want to run the football. And why wouldn't you with Dalvin Cook? It seems to be working out for the most part. But I do like Thielen. I think I mentioned this on the show on Monday. After his first 4 weeks last season, he had 40 catches, 473 yards on 56 targets. And so far this year, only 13 grabs, 170 yards through 4 games. So this is somebody they need to get the ball to. Like, can you imagine that? I mean, that's
no, I can't. I just
13
died a
catches
little
to
bit.
40. 13
Let me tell you,
catches
bro.
to 40.
Dude, I just died a little bit inside when you just said that. When
27 more catches he had last year at this point.
It's
and almost 40 more targets.
Hold on. I got to get a cocktail. Wait a second. Where am I right now? I mean, I need a drink. I can't imagine poor Thielen, what he's thinking.
That's why he's ticked. That's why he's pissed off. I mean, that's why he said after the game, one of the reporters asked him if, did you have a hard time finding, open space against that Bears secondary? And he said, no, absolutely not. And then he backtracked later on and said, listen, yeah, I understand Kirk Cousins needs some time to throw the ball. The offensive line, he was trying to backpedal just a little bit because the comments, like, he was ticked off. He was pissed. And it showed. And Diggs is complaining about the same thing. But I think this is a spot where you may see Thielen get leaned on here just a little bit. Like, okay, like for Cousins, like, this is an opportunity against the Giants. The pressure is not going to be there like it was last week with Chicago. He's going to hit Thielen, but it's a different feel. Like, he's not playing in the slot like he did last year. He seems to need more time down the field to get the ball to. So I understand. I see it all happening, but if now's the time, I mean, you look at Thielen from a season-long standpoint, like, go get him, because he's got the Eagles coming up, the Jets. Like, the matchups get a whole lot easier, but I think this is the time where Thielen, comes away with 6 or 7 catches like the Thielen of last year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
and if not,
No, I know. I'm just trying to recover. I still can't recover from the comparison year over year. And look, there's some gross. I talk about this on the radio show that I do on FNTSY. We dug deep. Craig Mish and I dug really deep into Cousins. And look, the coordinator is the quarterback coach from last year. It's not like a whole new thing. It's just, right. I feel like it's a massive overcorrection from being so predictable last year of just pass, and they fell apart. And now I feel like it's shaking his confidence. I think it's a mental thing. That's all it is.
He definitely doesn't look good. And Cook is healthy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So last year when he wasn't, they were throwing the ball a ton.
Yeah. Bears at Raiders. Look, Josh Jacobs is a tough sell. Williams is not 100%. I know the Raiders went in there and did a good job there. That was a big win for them on the road. I give them all the credit. Darius Leonard was out. They took advantage of that 100% with the middle of the field, but I don't care who's playing quarterback for the Bears. As long as Khalil Mack is there and Roquan Smith's supposed to be back for this one, it's going to be a long day for Derek Carr. It's going to be an ugly game from a fantasy perspective. The only guy that I'm slightly intrigued by is Montgomery, because I know last week the yardage totals are not great, but the carry numbers went up. And before that, it was the opposite. The carries were down, but the yardage numbers were good. And if they can have the perfect storm here against Oakland, that's the one guy where it's another. Take a look at him as a flex, as an RB2. I think in terms of pricing, he makes a lot of sense, but it's not without risk. So granted, if it's not for you, I understand, but it's something that I'm aware of, and it's him or Tariq Cohen in this one too, because I saw Tariq Cohen get a little bit with Chase Daniel too and look very comfortable together, and that was encouraging.
Yeah, you want to talk about comfortable together. Tariq Cohen, 2 games last year with Chase Daniel, 22 targets, 19 catches, 200 receiving yards. That's just 2
Yeah,
games.
yeah, that's
And
a
and
good
he
stat
came
there,
away
buddy.
last week with 5 targets, which was a team high. So it's one or the other. I think it's going to be a Montgomery game. That doesn't mean it can't be a Cohen game either. Like, you don't want to play both of them together. Like, if you're a FanDuel player, I think you go with Montgomery. The 21 carries, like you mentioned, were certainly encouraging. And then if you're a DraftKings player, I mean, maybe you go with Cohen, because I would not be shocked if he led this team in catches this week. I think this is a low-scoring game. I love the Bears' defense. I can't imagine Oakland doing a whole lot on the ground or through the air. So it could turn out to be, an ugly game where it's 24-3 at one point, and it's just a whole lot of Montgomery.
Yeah, I agree. All right, the Jets at Eagles here. In theory, I mean, we're still kind of waiting on the Darnold stuff and seeing where that's at. But no matter what, I mean, it's Le'Veon Bell with a ton of volume. How does that work out? I don't know. None of us know. It's a tough sell this week for me personally until things are up and running. And on the Eagle side of this, I think we all just throw our hands up in the air, because I don't think anybody can believe in a Jordan Howard repeat necessarily. And I'm at a loss with this one too. And I don't think it's a week to pay up for Ertz, because there are guys, going back to it, we were remiss. Greg Olsen against the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a very good defense, but they struggle against the tight end. And this is a great opportunity for Allen and Olsen in this game. So that's a tight end I like a lot. So I don't know if it's kind of go up to the top of tight end, because there's no Kelsey on the main slate either. I don't know. It's a very weird slate for me. I don't think I pay up for Ertz this week. So this game almost has a skip it on it for me.
Yeah, it's tough. I think if Sam Darnold plays, you can feel decent about Robbie Anderson, because it's just such a nice matchup against the Eagles secondary. They've given up the most fantasy points, most touchdowns, catches, like you name it. You check off every box in that secondary. It's such a good spot. But if Darnold doesn't play, and he was throwing as of recording, like I saw him throwing at practice today, so I feel like he will play. So I may roll out some Robbie, but you're right about Bell. It's just going to be so tough. Like, everything runs through him, but it's just so tough to run on the Eagles defense. That's why so many teams are throwing on him as well. And on the other side, their offense has kind of changed over the past couple of weeks. They are leaning on Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders, but you're playing such a risky game with both of those guys. They're just rotating through all of them. And last week against the Packers, the offensive line was so good, they created so many holes. And I think that's why Howard was able to have as good as a game as he did have, because the holes were just right there. I mean, you and I could have, racked up a few yards there. But I will say this about Howard: with every game that's happened, there's been an increase in touches and carries, right? It was 6, 8, 11, 15. He's top 4 in red zone rushing attempts. He does have 4 touchdowns, all of them coming inside the red zone. The Eagles are 14-point favorites. There's an opportunity maybe that they do lean on him. That's possible. But again, flip side, you're playing a risky game trying to figure out the Eagles' backfield, because Peterson rolls through all of those guys.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Broncos, Chargers. Look, that was all the 1:00 games, by the way. Just want to throw that out there again for everybody.
A couple 4:00 games. It's crazy.
10 1:00 games. 10. What?
Jeez.
Wacky times. But anyway, only 2 4:00 games. Broncos, Chargers, Packers, Cowboys. So there's some appeal here. I'm not buying into Melvin Gordon here this week. I'm sorry. It's going to be nice to see him on the field. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. Mike Williams is just getting healthy. That's great, but I can't get into that. Basically, the Chargers scare the hell out of me in this game. This reeks of trap game for me for the Chargers after last week, especially when they came out of the gate a little slow against Miami. And I don't think the Broncos are world beaters, but I'll tell you what, Emmanuel Sanders and Cortland Sutton, those are 2 guys that when I'm looking for low-cost ROI wide receivers, I got my eyes all over. And guess what? LineStar App agrees with me, because
nice.
LineStar App is much smarter than me, so I like to have it make me feel smart, because Emmanuel Sanders is against Brandon Faxon, 55th ranked corner overall in the slot there. So Emmanuel Sanders should have a pretty good day.
Yeah, what a tool. That cornerback.
Are you calling me names? Oh, sorry.
No, what a tool for the LineStar app to have. I mean, that cornerback matchup is
doing it again.
Unbelievable.
Right here. I thought we were friends.
Yeah, Faxon is the tool. So good on Emmanuel Sanders there. Yeah, I like it. 5,100, absolutely. Yeah, sign it up. And I'm not going to touch I gotta see the backfield play out. Like I would maybe play Eckler, but I'm going to go elsewhere. Like, I could see Eckler still having an okay game and people just shying away because now Gordon is back. it is such a fantastic matchup against Denver. I mean, Fournette had, I felt like 500 rushing yards against that
and
defense
Bradley
last
Chubb's
week.
out for the year now
Yeah,
too.
it
Another
does
big
make
piece
sense,
gone.
those two guys.
And that's all the things where I feel like they're just stacking up all these reasons why it should be easy for the Chargers. And there's one thing we know about the Chargers, especially at home. There's no home field advantage, and nothing's ever easy with them. So
nothing ever comes easy for the Chargers.
I'm
You're
sorry,
right.
Charger fans. I'm sorry. Like, you should have stayed in San Diego because that's just a nicer place to live. It's so much nicer. All right, Packers at Cowboys. I think the Cowboys offense bounces back in a big way here.
Same.
I know Green Bay's been very good, but I think this is another great contrarian play to get involved with Dallas. It really is. It's going to, not a lot of people will be on this. You can be on both sides of this too, because Adams probably is not going to be in this one. As of right now, it's definitely trending like he is doubtful basically for this.
Yeah.
If something changes, obviously keep an eye on that. I think Geronimo Allison and MVS are certainly two guys you can fire up. You can feel good about them. But really, I think this is an Ezekiel Elliott get-right game against the Packers. And tomorrow, when we talk about on the wagering show, I think this is a game that's going to go over too. I'm telling you right now, this has over written all over it.
Yeah, I think Zeke is an interesting pivot off a guy like McCaffrey. If you're just like, I don't want to play McCaffrey, I want to be different. I think Zeke is that guy that you can turn to. Again, I talked about the Eagles and how much success they had against Green Bay last week. They ran all over them, and they've allowed the third most fantasy points to backs, ranked 27th in rush DVOA. So I think this is a get-right game for Zeke too. I agree. Even in a down game, he still touched the ball 24 times last week. He caught 6 passes. So, I mean, I think he's ready for a full workload now. It's the writing's right there on the wall. So it's definitely a good spot for him. I like MVS. I think he has more upside than Geronimo, but Geronimo, having said that, is the touchdown guy. He's the red zone guy that Rodgers throws the ball to. He's already hooked up with him a couple times. So no Adams. Both those guys will be in play.
You know, it's funny. I mean, it was a mental block, but I actually realized we skipped a game, and that's the Tennessee-Buffalo game.
We
right?
skipped it for a reason.
Well, look, here's the one thing you got to know. You're not going to attack them in the secondary, so you're going to be running the ball, Derrick Henry, all day. I know everybody was impressed with A.J. Brown last week. Don't look for that. That was last week. Don't live in the past. It's not happening this week, not against Buffalo. And Buffalo right now, with their quarterback situation in flux, you can't go anywhere near that offense. So there you go. See, simple, done. It was like a mental thing.
Yeah, you skipped it on purpose, basically.
Skip it. All right, so here we go. It's time to win some swag, so let's get after it. It's our time to get in the end zone, and we're going to each pick a guy, a running back, and a wide receiver that we think is going to find the end zone. I will start this week, and I will start with my wide receiver. Let's start with the wide receivers. Give them some love. I'm going to go to that game all the way down in New Orleans, and I'm going to go with my boy Chris Godwin because I think he has a great matchup there. Lattimore is going to be dealing with Evans, and I don't think they have an answer for Mr. Godwin. They just don't. And Jameis Winston has no responsibility. He's going to throw the ball as many times as he can, and I love Godwin to score this week. So he's my wide receiver that finds the end zone. Who's your wide receiver find the end zone this week?
I am going to go with Adam Thielen. I think this is going to be an Adam Thielen week. He's complained. He's been cried. Yeah, I think that they take advantage of the Giants secondary, and Thielen really gets involved this week.
All right, so running back, who you got? Who's your RB that's going to get the touchdown this week in week 5?
Let's go with Zeke. I know he's up near the top of the board, but I think he gets right this week against Green Bay. What I saw last week, that run defense looked pretty weak, and the line of scrimmage was just completely won by the Eagles. The Dallas offensive line is very strong as well. So I'm going to go with Zeke. I think he gets a couple touchdowns this week.
I'm going to go with Mark Ingram. Get in that end zone there against those Steelers. I think he's a lock for a touchdown this week too. Guy we didn't really touch on too much in the show, but it doesn't matter because, some things you just know, and I know Mark Ingram's going to get in the end zone. So there you have it. Those are our guys. Now, if you like this and you want to get involved, retweet this segment, like it, and send it around, and you could win some swag from LineStar App because those guys there are great. And everybody likes a free hat. Who doesn't like a free hat? By the way, did you see that guy who is suing the team because he got hit in the face with a T-shirt from a T-shirt cannon? Did you see that?
What? No, I didn't see that.
How is that the T-shirt cannon's fault? It's your fault. You got to go work on your hands, bruh. Come on,
T-shirt. Like, what is he? Like, did he get seriously hurt from this T-shirt?
I don't know. This is the world we live in, Chris Meaney. This is the world we live in. All right, you can follow us on the Twitter machine at LineStar App, at Chris Meaney, and at Joe Pisapia 17. Again, check out all the great content over at LineStar App. Go sign up for the newsletter. You get all the stuff from Greg Landry and our boy Ryan Humphreys, Nitro DFS, and of course all the tools. So sign up for LineStar App and upgrade to the premium product. I'm telling you, part of the reason we're so prepared for this show and for you is because of the great work that everybody there does. So get on that right now, and it's time for us to break the huddle because there's nothing left to do now. The pre-snap is over, and now it's time to set, down, win.
You've been listening to the PreSnap Podcast, brought to you by LineStar. Hit subscribe, tell a friend, and stay tuned for the next episode from fantasy football experts Joe Pisapia and Chris Meaney.